Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for coming to Platforms Analytics Academy. I think we still have some people that are trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get through some logistical information anyway, and then we'll get directly into the content that we have today. So again, thank you for being able to make it today. So as usual, these are always for you. We try as hard as we can to bring fresh ideas and better understanding to things and also practical guidance. So please get as much out of this as you possibly can, and which leads to one of the other ones, ask questions. Please ask questions around the content that we're covering. And of course, you can ask questions about any other thing. I do have other panelists that are on the call that can answer questions. If they can type those out, they will. If we need to go live and answer those, we can do that as well. And this also is being recorded. So this session will be out in the community later on today or early tomorrow morning, and also out on our YouTube channel. So if you didn't, if you weren't able to track with all the questions that were coming in, just know that you can watch the recording, and then of course also sit back and watch. Obviously you can take notes, but again, it's being recorded, so you can always look at it later on if you need to. Safe harbor notice. I don't know that we have anything in this, but we always like to make sure that we talk about this just in case there is anything that is discussed, whether it be part of the presentation or around conversations that we're having with other panelists or even other customers. So just keep this in mind and make sure that no buying decisions are made off of any of the content that we're covering here today. With that, again, my name is Thomas Davis. I am the host and the presenter today, and I have my coworkers Tara and Dan that are here today, along with also Adam, who is our boss, and Isaac will be here at some point as well. He is one of our gurus around metrics. We have quite a few of those, but he is also a great guy to answer some questions around that. So with that in mind, what we want to talk about today is metrics inside of indicators, and then using those same indicators inside of the Platform Analytics Workspace. Very similar to an academy that we did a couple years ago that was kind of talking about the same thing, but Platform Analytics Workspace was not around then, or not out being used exclusively the way that it is now. So we wanted to make sure that we wanted to revisit this and show you the same capability inside of Platform Analytics Workspace. So with that, what is a metric? So let's talk about that before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of actually doing some creation or whatnot. So metrics are used to create events or store events around things that are happening within a record. Excuse me. So quite often, incident is probably one of the higher used ones. So you want to see where an assignment group changed from one assignment group to another, and maybe the duration between that, or maybe you want to see when a state changes and what was the duration between that, or priority, how much time was in between those changes, or if it was assigned to a particular technician and then it got assigned to another technician, what was the time frame in that, or is there an incident that was sitting around and maybe wasn't assigned to someone or even an assignment group for a particular amount of time. How can I see that? How can I do that? So then you can, obviously make perhaps some management rules around the way that things are happening there, but also just to get an idea if there perhaps is bottlenecks around certain things that are happening or whatnot. So metrics gives you the ability to look at that information and, again, see some duration. It's not always just duration. You can see other things, but I know duration is probably the one that is used the most. The amount of time between one thing happening and another thing happening within an incident or change request or task or request or anything like that, you can definitely use the metrics around that information. So knowing what a metric is will obviously help you make decisions on what exactly you want to use metrics for. There's two main things that you have to think about when you think about a metric. So the definition. So what are you trying to measure? What are you trying to get out of that? And you need to create a definition around that. And that of course requires a metric admin role to do that. But then you have the metric instance. And what these are the records that are generated from the definition when the definition is being used. So at each instance of that record will create, or each record of whatever you're gathering is an instance, and those are kept inside of that particular table that you can use to report out on that. So you need to be able to create the metric. You need to know what it is, and that's your definition. And then any results that come from that definition will be your metric instance. So metric that comes out of the box, but if it doesn't, if it's not, or it hasn't happened within your instance, there is a plugin that you can find and you can install that. Other plugins that may not come out of the box may also have the metric definition that get installed with those. You can add a package to your list to view and see what plugin the metric definition comes from. So again, it's generally out of the box, but if you don't see it there, this is how you would actually make sure that you can start using the metric plugin. So definition. So quite often, and not just with metrics, but with many things that are inside of our platform, we try to go ahead and create some things that are out of the box for you. And there are quite a few out of the box metrics that are metric definitions that are already there that you can use inside of reporting. You can use inside of indicators or whatnot, or inside of indicator sources. There are quite a few that are already out there. So and you hear this quite often in these calls, and I'm probably sure other calls as well, use what's already there rather than sort of recreating the wheel. Do we have an out of the box that's going to take care of every use case that's out there? Probably not. And there probably are some use cases out there, but I would always recommend that you look first, go and find where the metric definitions are, and look and see if one of those will supply you with what you need in order to fulfill whatever you're looking to do. So again, check and see what's out there before you actually go to creating that information. And then from that, so metric instance records get created, like I said before, when a definition is actually being used. And there's a couple ways that you can actually do it. So if the metric is a duration, then the system will automatically populate that metric instance table and with those duration values, so the time length or whatnot. If the metric is calculated from a script, and there are scripts that are used in metrics quite often, and we're going to show a couple of those today, then it's calculated from that script, and the script itself must populate the metric instance table. So it'll actually give the results based off of what that script is doing when you look for those particular instances. So now, how do you get a metric to work per se? So there's a database view that has to be created in order to use a metric. And most of those, or not most of those, but a good portion of those have already been created for you as well. So again, now this does require you to be an admin. So if you don't have an admin role and you need to see whether or not there's a database view out there that's connected to the particular metric or whatnot that you want, let's say is there an incident metric that's already out there? Most cases it's probably there, but if you don't know, then obviously you would have to reach out to an admin. Unless you yourself are an admin, then you can look for those. But again, create a database view that's going to pull the metric definition in as well as the metric instance. And then of course, whatever table that you're actually going to pull that data from. And you can see that here in this example. So the incident metric, it's going to take the metric definition, and then it's going to connect that to the instance. And then that instance connects to the incident. And that's where you're actually able to get your results. So the metric incident metric database view that you're looking at here is what you would actually connect to inside of reporting or inside of an indicator source or whatnot to actually pull that particular data back that you're looking for. Now, again, if you have to use a script, then it could get a little bit more advanced, and there's other things that you have to do, which we'll show here in a minute. But again, a database view is needed to actually pull that data together. And like I said, check and see, because there's a lot that are already there. And there may even be some that were created by your organization that you're just not aware of that you can connect to as well. And again, that does require an admin role, so just be aware of that. And just real quick, I'll check with the panel. Anything that we need to touch on real quick? Looks empty for Q&A. Are we good?
All good.
All right. Silence is good. Okay. One of the other things that I always like to talk about to make sure that, you're aware and ask yourself whether or not you should be using SLAs, maybe instead of using a metric. Do SLAs always fulfill what you need rather than a metric? Not all the time, but I think it's definitely something that you should think about and you should look at and see what SLAs are actually out there, because SLAs as well are going to look at the duration of something to see whether or not it falls within the particular SLA, and there's also OLAs that are out there as well. But, be aware that service level agreements, SLAs, are out there, and go and look at those. And those themselves may be able to give you the information that you're looking for. But even from a governance perspective, is your organization using SLAs in order to make sure that whatever the expected result is it happening? Can you get that and find that information out from SLAs? So hopefully you're using those. If you're not, definitely look into those. And we have some Academy sessions where we actually look at SLAs, and there's plenty of content in the docs that talk about that as well. But that may be something that you want to always think about, whether it has anything to do with metrics or not, or if you're just thinking in general, is there something that we can use that will make sure that we're providing the expectation for our customers when it comes to something, whether it be an incident or change request or whatever it happens to be. Make sure that you just look at service level agreements as well. I think they're important to always remember in the grand scheme of things as well. So
a question did come in. Can we get the response time and resolution time that assigned to a past assignment group on a ticket in a metric SLA? So it's talking about a metric SLA. I'm not even sure what that is.
So it's like,
well, I would go with, when we're talking about SLAs and assignment groups, when I hear those two words together, I want to look at SLA breakdowns, which is a very, very, very specific use case. It only works on assignment groups and assigned to, I believe. But if what you're dealing with is assignment or SLAs type stuff, use SLAs. If what you're doing, and if you want to know assignment group and assigned to and all that stuff, you want to use SLA breakdowns, which is a plugin you have to activate. Metrics are for the other stuff. Like a best example is a priority change. I want to be able to look at every time my priorities escalate, de-escalate, just the changes from those things. It's just not bound to an SLA. It's not about a service level.
Right.
Metrics are fine and they're good, useful, awesome. But if you start talking about assignment groups, you're going to be trending to SLAs, because once you are talking about assignment groups and things like that, you really want to handle business calendars. And that's one of the big, and I don't know if I'm going to steal the thunder, but one of the big differences between SLAs and metrics is SLAs or OLAs have the SLA engine, which has pauses, resets, business calendars. Metrics don't have those. Metrics are wall clock.
yeah, I was going to say that's one of the bigger distinctions that I often make with that is if you need a duration based upon a business calendar of any kind, a duration of any kind, SLAs are often the way to go. Not always, not every time, but that's the thing I would usually look at first whenever you need something that is based upon some sort of non 24/7 calendar.
Yeah, great input. And I think to make sure that everybody understands the idea behind bringing up service SLAs in the context of this call is it always comes down to the use case. And I think, Adam and Dan both mentioned things that maybe would drive you to think about an SLA. They're not going to replace things that are happening in metrics all the time. But again, I think, like Adam said, if you're looking at the assignment groups or whatnot, whatever you need to do, just check these out, right? This is just the idea of getting you to think that there's other things as well that you could potentially use. But again, I think it just comes down to the individual use case on that. So are we good to keep going?
Yeah, just a real quick question. I'm gonna do some. Have we done an Academy session on just SLA before?
I think we do. I think it was a couple of years ago. I believe it was. I have to look, but I know that we've done something, and it's probably one of those ones that could be revisited. But I'll make sure that I attach it to this community event, because I believe that there was one that we did.
Okay,
Adam,
I'll take a look. I just wanted to check for this one question that came
So
in.
we definitely did on the SLA one. I will say we covered it from a technical perspective. When you look at SLAs, there's a lot more to it. We're analytics people. We're all here. We can speak freely, right? I just need to be able to report on it. But SLAs and when should I when is a valid time to pause? What is a valid reset? Those are business decisions that I don't think we covered as much. It's about what is a good SLA and how aggressive should I be with that, and what should my SLA attainment be? There are sessions on that. There's other academies on that. That's something I know ITSM deals with a lot, and there's other content on that. So make sure you're thinking about that from the process definition, and then from our perspective. And I know where the academy we had on that is, I just need to report on it. I just need to know the answer, and understand how to do it and guide somebody to the right thing. But make sure you don't underestimate the business impact of setting an SLA. And I do hear people talk about, we're not ready for SLAs. Well, you got to start sometime, right? But again, there's some other sessions, some other topics about that. See if there's one for knowledge about it, but the methodology and the thought process behind what makes a good SLA. And Mike, I think Dan talked about it as well, about the business calendars. Should I be counting weekends? Should I not be counting weekends? All that stuff. You got to deal with all that. The SLA engine is awesome, but it's awesome. It's feature rich, but that means it can be a little bit complex. So make sure when you are setting SLAs, you are thinking about those things. And that's may not be depending on your role in your organization, may not be for the analytics team to set, but the process owner needs to be very involved with that, and then we'll report on it. And the comment I read, SLAs scare people at my org. We need to, I'm going to date myself. What's how I stopped fearing the SLAs and learned to love the SLA. I got that quote. But that we do, the SLA stuff is so powerful from our perspective as data people. To get metrics to do business calendars, you can't do it, man. It's painful. To do resets, like I see it when you're dealing with people and we're dealing with blame. If we're upfront about it, right? I want to who caused the problem, right? Who wasn't servicing? That's an SLA. That's an OLA. Use the SLA engine. It's awesome. It's amazingly powerful. If your organization's not using that, you're not getting everything out of ServiceNow. You can. It is phenomenal. You cannot recreate SLAs in Excel and SQL, and if you can, you don't want to. It's just such a powerful engine. Metrics, we'll talk about more about now. They're also very useful for what we want. They're a tool in our toolbox that we use that I just need to measure this, but make sure you're listening to what you're being asked for to decide, hey, what you're actually asking for is an SLA. Go get some training on SLAs. Let's configure SLAs. Let's not be afraid of it. And when it's things like, I just need to track, there was a use case that came in. How long after an outage does the incident get created? Yeah, maybe that's something a metric is, right? It's a pure wall clock. When somebody, if I hear business calendar, I'm going to gravitate to SLAs. It's not always the case, but I'm going to gravitate to SLAs. And if I can get away with it in wall clock, metrics are simple, easy, effective. But when you need an SLA, you need an SLA.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. All right, so quickly, let's kind of just look at some demos. So here we're going to look at the average duration of assignments, and then also the average unassigned duration. So real quickly, this is kind of the roles that would be required to create this from the beginning to the end. Here's some ServiceNow docs that also can help you with that. And our use case is to gain better insight and easily identify if there are bottlenecks in the incident process with a specific assignment group. So that's what we're going to try to find out inside of this particular demo. So I'm going to show you some screenshots, and then we're actually going to take that information and we're going to put it into Platform Analytics Workspace and actually look at that. So the first thing, and the directions are here, and you can go back to these, and the end result of what you're looking at here in the screenshot is actually what was created. So the indicator that we created in this is about assignments related to incidents resolved yesterday. That means the indicator source is on the metric database view, and that includes assignments with an end date further in the past than yesterday. So in general, an incident record is resolved by changing the state to resolved, and then the business rule sets the resolved date. when the state changes on the incident record, the related metric instance record for the incident state duration is updated with an end date and a duration and a new, that's when the new metric instance record is actually created for the state of resolved. But the related open metric instance record for the assignment group remains open. Thus, for the indicator score, the duration for the last assignment group should only be calculated up to the resolved date of the incident. So in this, we actually created the indicator source that is pointing to the incident metric table, and you can see that here. And then we have some conditions that we put in there. So resolved on today, definition is the assignment group. We want to look at the assignment group, and then the start is more than 0 hours before the resolve time. So we want to see, if we can pull back any information on that. And of course, the view table that we're looking at is the metric instance and the default view. So if you do all of these things and set up correctly, this is what your end result would actually look like. And that's the indicator source that starts this whole process for us. So again, we talked about this earlier. So there is some scripting that is required in order to make this particular use case work. And here I've created, and these are the directions here, I've created the actual script that we're going to use inside of our automated indicator here in a second. And this kind of tells you what's going on here. So I created it and I popped that script in. And what exactly is this script doing is the question. So this script calculates the duration in hours between two different dates. So the X date is the start, right, of the metric in the metric instance record, and then it uses that's the X date, and then the Y date is the end date. So that actually is going to take, or if the end date and resolve date from instance do not exist, then the collection date score is used. Or if the end date does not exist, but resolve date does, the resolve date is used. Or if the end date is greater than the resolve date, then resolve. That was a lot of information there. But this is kind of telling you what's going on in this script. And this script is tried and true. I think people actually everybody that's on this call would say that they've seen the script for many, many years, and it works. And this script is generic enough that you could actually change this and use it for open process records if you choose to as well. But this is what's going to happen sort of behind the scenes as attached to the automated indicator that we're going to create that will actually give us that information that we need. So here is the automated indicator, what it would look like once we create it. And you can see that we've named it. And then indicator source, which we created a couple steps ago. And then there's that particular script. So when you actually click on that and find that, you can find that script that you created. The aggregate is average because we're looking at the average. And we want to make sure that we collect the records so we can see those as well. And then you can publish it on the Analytics Hub. You can see this in the Analytics Club, but we're also going to show you pretty much everything that you can see in Analytics Club. You can Hub. You can also see in the Platform Analytics Workspace, which we'll show here in a second live. But that's how your automated indicator would look for this particular process. So now we also need a breakdown mapping. So we're going to create a breakdown mapping on the existing assignment group breakdown to the incident metric view. So we want to make sure that we create that connection, that mapping between those, so we can use that breakdown when we actually look at our results. So make sure that, you always, put that mapping in there so you'll know there could be more. This particular breakdown has more, but we added in our incident metric, which you can see here. We added that in there. And of course, we added in our indicator that's actually going to be using the breakdown as well. So this may be elementary to a lot of the people on this call. If you've done this once or twice, then you pretty much know how to do it, but just make sure that you understand that you can't leave that step out. And of course, you have to add it to a data collection job. So here we've done that. We've added it to we have an incident metric historical data collection that goes back 3 months. So we're going to add that particular indicator to that, and then we're going to run that job. And here you can see that it ran with no issues. Make sure, just caveat, make sure that you always check your job logs to see if there's any warnings or errors, to make sure that if something did happen, you can figure out actually what it was. To make sure that your data comes back the way that you expect it to. I know that this happens a lot. A lot of people just run the job and take off, especially this is an on-demand one. If it's something that's ran on a daily, then I guess you kind of get just used to it that it's running. You should definitely check those as well. But if there's something that you're running on demand, stick around long enough for the job to finish and look at that job log to make sure that it collected successfully and you have the little green dot there that says it's good. So with that, let's actually look at adding that to our Platform Analytics Workspace. So let me go here, refresh here. So if you're familiar with this, then glad to hear that. If you've not done anything inside of the Platform Analytics Workspace yet, we do also have Academies session that can walk you through that whole process as well, and I'll make sure that I attach it. But so if you haven't seen it, then here's going to be a good opportunity for you to do that. So what I want to do, this is a landing page for it, but what I want to do is I want to create a dashboard. We have some that are already there, but I'm going to create a new one, and we're just going to call it Academy metric test. And we're going to use the inline editor because there's not anything advanced that we're going to be doing here. And I would recommend as much as you possibly can to use the inline rather than the technical. Maybe use cases where you need the technical, gives you a lot more advanced features or whatnot. But for what we're doing here, we're only going to need the inline. So we're going to go ahead and create that dashboard. And this is our dashboard here. And next, what we want to do is we just want to create an element, and we want to add a data visualization. So this would be the same way as adding any type of widget that you have done in the past. And we're just gonna make it a single score. That's going to work. And we're going to look for our data source. Now, our data source is going to be that automated indicator that we created. So average, if I can spell, average duration. And actually, I think it's going to pop. Oh, I can't type. There we go. All right, I'm hitting the space bar. I know I am. There we go. That's so weird. There we go. Let me click on it before it does something. There we go. All right, so we're going to add that in, and we can already see that there's some information here or whatnot telling you all the properties there. You can see that assignment breakdown mapping that we did is now there. We can actually do that. So we're going to go ahead and add this source. And now we can actually see some data. So, again, depending on how good your data is, for this, I'm going to change our date range, and I'm going to apply a date range. And I just want to look at the last month. So I'm going to click on that. And now I'm only seeing the last month's data. One other thing that I want to make sure that I want to do, because I want to drill down into it, is expand data update. And I want to make sure that I enable drill down. Now, there's many other features here that you can use and change things. That's not really what this call is about. But again, if you're familiar with all of these things, we have a couple really great sessions that can walk you through all of the different things that you can do inside of the dashboard here. So we're going to go ahead and save that, and then we're going to exit. And now we can see that that's the information that we created. So the average duration of assignments of resolved incident. So what's the average time that something has been assigned to a group that has been actually resolved? And we can click into that same information. And this is where some of the same things that you're used to seeing inside of the Analytics Hub, you can do that same information, see that same information here. So here we can see, this is actually showing the last 3 months, but you can see all of that different information. And then there are those actual records that you can see directly there. And then there's the other things that you can show here. So if you wanted to actually see, let's do chart options, and I want to show statistics. So these are some same information that you're used to seeing on the Analytics Hub that you can see directly here as well. And again, if I wanted to filter that and I want to look per assignment group, here it's going to actually show me all of those particular assignment groups that at least have an incident that fall inside of this. And I can click on any one of those and apply that filter. And now I'm just looking at where the assignment group is database or whatnot, and seeing how that information sort of flows through or whatnot. So again, taking the same information and showing it in Platform Analytics Workspace that you could do also in the previous dashboards, as well as the Analytics Hub. Is it a replacement to that? No, not saying that. You can obviously still use whatever you're comfortable with using, but if this is something that you're using, then you can definitely use that as well. So let me pause there. Do we have anything that we need to touch on?
There are a couple questions that came in that aren't really related to metrics, though. I don't know if you want to hold off and do that.
If they're not directly related to metrics, then I think that we could probably get to those at the end, if possible, just so we don't change anybody's mindset at this point.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right. So again, I've taken that information and I can now see that inside of the dashboard. So there, and again, you can change this to, if there's a different way that you actually want to look at it, rather than being a single score, you can choose a different way of looking at it. So maybe
hang on, Thomas.
Sure.
Stephen corrected me. I guess you touched on thresholds. Can you overview thresholds a bit more? Dynamic versus static versus deviation from normal type stuff. And that's directly related to what you were just covering. I apologize, Stephen. I read that and I thought, oh, he's talking about, I was thinking par thresholds and I wasn't thinking about what Thomas had just said. So my apologies.
Okay. So let me read. Can you overview thresholds a bit more? Dynamic versus static versus deviation from normal type stuff. You might need to bring Stephen off here to actually give me the use case that he's talking about, because I just don't know how far of sort of aside that we could go when we start talking about that particular content, because that could be probably pretty in depth, unless somebody else on the call has a quick answer to that. And I don't know that there's a quick answer to that.
I unmuted him.
Stephen,
yeah, I think in the interest of time, let's go ahead and set this aside. You know, metrics and thresholding, or thresholding on metrics, whether it's a static metric, you know, you go above this threshold for this period of time, then it becomes a deviation from normal or a threshold over time. And those kind of things can be enormously useful in monitoring situations, but it's probably beyond the scope of this call. So let's set those aside.
Well, I
go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so a lot of what comes in there with the thresholds they're not handled in our metrics system, because metrics is just tracking the changes that come through. But we would layer that type of use case we'd be looking at for thresholds and targets, but really a lot of what you're describing, I think of KPI signals, where once we define KPIs on things, signals are going to alert me to there's an issue, right? With various different machine learning algorithms.
Yeah, ultimately, it's great to have metrics, but if I as a human have to observe the metrics on a continuous basis, they're less valuable to me than if I can get some sort of thresholding.
That's what KPI signals does.
Okay, all right, great.
I mean, specifically. So I believe we had a session on those before. Yep. I'll put a link in. But what you're describing is exactly it, right? I don't want to look at it. Just tell me what I need to do. Tell me when there's an issue. That's but our KPI signals are based off of performance analytics and KPIs, not the metrics here, which are more audity. But if you, as we saw before, if I take metrics, I layer on PA, then I can use KPI signals to get that automatic signaling.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what I would want, because just for all metrics, after a time, they become they become stale, and no one pays attention to them if I don't have meaningful thresholding on them, vis-a-vis KPIs, as you just said. So let's set that aside. I didn't mean to take us off track. I thought it was a relevant topic here. So let's see.
No, that's okay, Stephen. I mean, I think ask all the questions, right? So we can at least point you in the right direction if it's not related. And I think, like Adam said, he's probably looking for the KPI Signals Academy session that we did, and he can put that in the link here, and that should help you. Or at least he already did it. There you go. Is that the Academy, Adam? No, that's a doc. There's the Academy. There it is. So he put that into the chat for you, Stephen. So that should definitely help you. Okay, so moving on. So we've added our metric to we're using our metric inside of an indicator source. We've created the script that we need that provides us with those durations that we're looking for. We attach that to the automated indicator. We also did a breakdown mapping that gives us the ability to look at this information by an assignment group. And of course, we ran our data collection job that compiles that information together. And then we added it to a dashboard inside of Platform Analytics Workspace, gives it the ability to drill down so we can see it at the record level. And of course, a date range, you can do all those things. And like I said, there's a lot more options that you can do with the actual data visualization itself inside of Platform Analytics. But we just touched it lightly. But again, there's sessions that can go a deeper dive with that. So what I want to do is let's talk about another use case that we're going to show as well. And, wanting to be able to collect scores about the average unassigned duration. So what does that mean? So if an incident, let's say the total time frame that an incident is open is 24 hours, right? One day. How many of those hours did it actually not have, or was it not assigned to a group? What's that amount of time? And then let me see the percentage of that, right? So let's say if I had an incident that was open for 24 hours, but yet it sat for 12 hours with it not assigned. So that way it would say, so 50% of the time that incident was open, it sat unassigned. So that's really great information that you can look at, an organization can look at to give better response times to whoever their customers may be, to say, you know what, why did it sit for 12 hours? Maybe there's a legit reason that it did. Maybe there's not. But let's just at least give you the ability to see that information to then make business decisions off of that once you actually see what it is. So that's what we're going to do in this next demo. And again, there's docs that support this and the roles that would be required if you were going to create it. So again, going back to the same way we did before, we have to create an indicator source. And again, we're going to connect it to the incident metric facts table. And then these are the conditions that we're going to look at. So resolved on today, and the definition is unassigned duration per assignment group. So this is a definition that was already created, and we're actually going to use that inside of this particular indicator source. So these are the directions of how you can do that. And here's what the end result would look like if you did. And then with that, we of course have to use a script again. And this is a script that you would actually need in order to accomplish what we're trying to do in this use case. And if the end date of the metric instance does not exist because the incident is still open, then the collection date score end is used rather than because of the fact it doesn't have a resolve. So this makes a script fit to be used for open process records as well, just like the other one. So just keep that in mind. So again, we have to create a new automated indicator, and this is the steps that we would do to create this. And here we're going to use that script that we created as well. And these are the units and the precision and all that different stuff. And again, publish it. I always recommend publishing it on the Analytics Hub so you can actually see it and collect the records if you can do that. Now, this one will be a little bit different because we have to, once we create this automated indicator, we actually have to create a formula indicator as well. So seeing the records in the workspace is going to be a little bit different there. But here, we're going to take that first automated indicator that we created along with this one and create some math inside of this formula indicator to give us the results that we're looking for. So here you can see the first one that we created, and then we're going to have a 7-day running average, and then we're going to divide that by the new one that we created with a 7-day running, and then multiply by that by 100 so we can get the percentage that we're actually looking for of time of when an incident actually sits not being assigned. So again, add that to the data collection job. You want to make sure as well that you do, we already did the mapping. So the mapping is there, the breakdown mapping is there. So you'll be good on that. But again, you want to make sure that you have that breakdown in both of those automated indicators as well to make sure that, you know, your results are going to come out the way that you expect them to do. So again, run that job, and here you can see that, and it pulls back a little bit more information here. And so now let's actually see that and what it looks like inside of Platform Analytics Workspace. So all we're going to do here is we're going to edit, and I'm just going to add another data visualization. And same process as we did before. I got to find my data source. And because I've been playing around with this past couple of days, getting it ready, I know that this is it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that particular one. And again, the breakdowns are there. And we're going to go ahead and add that. So what you're looking at here, and let me change my date range as well here. I'm just going to look for the past month again. And here, what you can see is 49% of the incidents that were open on the 17th. Of the incidents that were open and not yet resolved or resolved on the 17th, 49% of that time those incidents were open per se on that day, 49% of that time they were unassigned. So when we click into this, and because this is a formula indicator, you actually can't see the records here, but we can look day by day as this finishes loading here. There's always one that's going to take a little bit of time here. Oh, come on. There we go. What are we doing here? It's taking its time here. But what we're looking at here, so on April the 18th, 49% of was the amount of time that incidents sat unassigned that were resolved. So again, 50% maybe of close to 50% of the amount of time that let's say an incident was open for 24 hours, 49% of that time it actually sat in an unassigned state. So that, depending on your business, maybe that's a good number. I don't really look at that as a good number, but I don't really know the business of what somebody else may want it to be. But that at least can let you know that's probably not, we should look at that. And you can see here how it kind of fluctuates up and down depending on the day. So here, 33.75% of the time that the incidents, they were not assigned of the ones that were actually resolved. 33% of the time that they sat there in an unassigned state rather than being assigned for something that was resolved. So again, this, can help you from a management perspective kind of see some things. So these are two use cases where you can use one and also the new one, bring them together to see a percentage of time. And again, I think that this is probably a really good use case of actually knowing how much of the time that an incident is open, how much time it actually sits in an unassigned state. So yeah. So go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
Well, Tom, I want to add into this one too. So the great example comes through. And particularly when I might start adding some more breakdown, another breakdown on priority, right? Like I'm concerned about more concerned about P1 resolution time than P4s, although the percentage of time, maybe it's okay. But resolution time, this is a great one where, yeah, I can get this metric and get it quick. I can look at it, but I'm going to be, my experience when I deal with a customer and I'm talking to it, they'll go, oh yeah, but that's because there's different, like you can't ding me on the weekends, right? People are putting cases in on Friday nights. That's where I actually want to go create an SLA, even if it's not an official SLA, right? I'm going to use the SLA engine, whether I'm going to call it an OLA, an SLA, or I'm just going to call it something else, where resolution time, I want time to resolve, time to assign. Even though my organization might not officially have SLAs for assignments, it's such a key thing that I want to look at. I want to define an SLA based on assignment, just time to assign, acknowledge, assign, resolve. I might have 3 of those. Again, even though my organization might only focus on one, I'm going to define all 3 so that way I can use those business calendars and make sure that I have the right pauses and I have the right resets. This is a objective measure. Metrics are objective, they're wall clock. It was on assignment for this time. From my customer's perspective, this is absolutely real. But as I'm dealing with an organization, I want to resolve it. I want to fix it. I want to get better. I probably want to use SLAs so that people can't discount my metrics, discount my numbers, that metrics in this case, but just they can't discount this because, oh, well, it's counting weekends and that I shouldn't get dinged for that. So make sure you're aware and you're thinking about all those things, not just do I get a number, do I get an accurate number, an objective number, but sometimes we need to make sure we're taking into account the entire process. So if I am dealing with something very task-based, very person assigned, like assigned just sensitive, it has to do with the group, make sure you consider SLAs. And if you're looking at just escalations, de-escalations, how long does it take to escalate, de-escalate? And I look at the priority, or I'm looking at the state, that's where especially state changes, things that you know will change, the fast changing metrics, or even the slow ones, priorities, states, categories, those are things that are just, that do not fit the SLA category, and metrics are your best case.
So that basically addresses the question that Erica brought up. So we're focusing mostly, keep talking a lot about time, but really you can also capture using metrics when things change, bounce from different assignment groups. That's correct, right?
Yes. So your reassignment count, it's awesome, right? So the real power of metrics that I see, the time, it gets confusing, right? And we talk about it. And so we just want you to make sure you're thinking about, do I use SLAs or do I use metrics? But if I want something like the number of reassignments, one, you can add a counter, great. But metrics fill a void in the platform. PA is taking snapshots daily of what's going on. My audit gives me every detail known to mankind. It's great. But metrics allow me to say, no, I just want to make sure I see all the different changes. So things like a metric, I apologize, a KPI, I'm going to create an indicator and a KPI on how many times an incident changes priority. I want to understand that because that's never good. So that's a great metric. And it's not the changing of the priority, it's not the changed priority. It's the changing. How many times is it escalated or de-escalated? It's going to be frustrating. Category changes. Oh, how many of us have put in an incident and it just bounces from category to category to category to category, right? It bounces, not just assignment group, but category, and things happen. I might still be meeting my SLAs. But I want to start measuring that, because what I might see is, hey, if it starts in this category, it bounces around a lot. So I need to go look at my process of how I'm routing, because things aren't going well, right? Metrics help you see that stuff, right? It's not SLA. It's not SLA way. It is a way to see other things that are going on. And it's the KPIs, the indicators built on top of metrics that it can be incredibly insightful. Process, by the way, some of this process optimization helps with some of this too. It looks at a lot of these things, but metrics allow you to build your own, right? Things that are matter for you, report on those things. But do make sure that you're looking when you're starting from scratch. Sorry, this is always the plug. Look at what's out of the box. If you're trying to tune the process for a routing issue, like I talked about, well, process optimization just does it for me. I don't even really need to think about it. I can just see the results, and it looks visually amazing. If I'm looking for KPIs, make sure you look at the out-of-the-box content packs that PA has on there. So we build a lot of things with metrics, and we build those indicators for you. And then process optimization or workforce optimization takes it even further along than I've ever dreamed of. But we're reviewing the metric building blocks so you can build your own, right, on what comes in.
So real quick, because this kind of goes in line with what you just, an anonymous question came in saying, would the metrics table work for determining whether a task or catalog task item has been in backlog for more than a given time frame? And what comes to my mind is Spotlight, but I don't know.
Yep. So I think spot. So metrics are always fired off of the change, right? So something not changing is not very metric-y.
Yeah, that's not something that we, okay. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, but I think an indicator, well, I'll tell you, I would go for that to be an SLA, an assignment SLA.
Oh, that's true too.
Because it's going to tell you, hey, this stuff needs to get assigned, and you can set that based off priority, right? You can set it off lots of different things. So I would, if I were looking for that if that was a problem for me, I would look at an assignment SLAs. I'm a fan of them, in case that doesn't come across. That Spotlight is good as well. I mean, Spotlight scratches the same itch. SLAs will give you more warning.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that pause and that
Better
reset.
engine for sure.
Yeah. When I look at, it's very specialized, right? But it's this thing we all do. So that's why I'll tell you, SLA breakdowns are incredibly specialized, but they also answer a question that we all have, right? So we want to use them when we can, and then we'll get more generic from SLA breakdowns to SLAs in general to metrics on what comes in. A lot of them will do the same thing, but you got to go kind of, where do I want to be, and then what should I do? Comments came in, and I completely agree about the business time versus wall clock. Metrics don't lie, they're real, right? What Thomas showed, the percentage of time has been unassigned from a customer's perspective, that's absolutely real. There's no lying. And if you're a 24-hour shop, then it's easy and right. But it's something you need to be aware of, because I've been in things where I'll tell you, I want to compare and contrast them. To go, I'm glad we're all meeting our SLAs, but it's taking forever, right? Our SLAs aren't good enough. So metrics are a good way to, you can't argue with the clock, right? But in an organization and what comes in and what the expectations and all that stuff, if you need to say, hey, we are 5 by 12, okay, well then let's use SLAs and we'll report 5 by 12. But you also want the awareness, eye-opening. Metrics can be eye-opening because they are objective, and that's very powerful. But with great power comes great responsibility. I just made that up, just so you know, right, Tara? Just that came to me. All right.
Trademark that.
Yes, but
We're gonna get bumped on that. We're gonna get a
Trademark
copyright tick on the recording of this. Okay. Sorry, I did promise Thomas I wasn't gonna talk.
You didn't promise. You just said I wasn't. There was never
Yeah.
a promise with it. But listen, if you provide great information, man, talk away. I'm sure the customers appreciate it, and they're already thanking you in the chat. So you're definitely good stuff. So I appreciate that. So real quick, just because of time, I want to make sure that we get everything in here. So I guess in conclusion of all of this, we've talked about it in depth. A metric measures and evaluates the effectiveness of IT service management processes. Metrics need to be gathered as data is updated. Use what is out of the box if you can, and make sure that you're looking for that. And again, if you can utilize the SLAs and SLA metrics, then those, of course, are a great source. Also, here's all the ServiceNow documentation that was used in the creation of this presentation, and there are some things that are out in the ServiceNow community as well. The understanding SLA and breakdown metrics, that Academy session's there, and then there is creating incident first reply time metrics, which I think is another one that there is a post around that as well. So we've definitely been answering questions throughout, and
we can answer this one. Can you go back to that slide, Thomas?
This one?
So Eric asked about there being a course. There is no course that focuses specifically on creating a metric. This Academy session that Thomas did today, as well as all of these resources that he just provided right here, are going to be your best bet. Honestly, the easiest and simplest thing to do is to go into metric definitions and open them up and start looking at how they're pretty easy to understand, intuitive to understand how they've been created. And you can go ahead and make tweaks and changes based off of your scenario pretty easily. So I don't know. And then with these resources available out there now, you should be in pretty good shape. I don't know that you would need an entire course for that. Just don't be afraid. Maybe get on an subprod instance and start just playing around with it. It's pretty intuitive.
I think there is I know we had labs on this in the past, and I think there is some stuff in Now Learning on metrics specifically.
Oh, okay.
Duration metrics are super simple. Duration metrics are what we're going to use. They're going to cover 90% of your things. Just create a log every time this changes. Then there is scripting, and the scripting ones, some are straightforward, some are not.
But some of the scripts most of the scripts are provided already. So you just have to kind of look at them and see how they've been.
But I'll say with some of the scripts that come through, the scripts it is just an asynchronous business rule. You could write it a different way as well. Perhaps less complex to do that. Some of them are old, and some of them scratch the itch before we had SLA breakdowns. Before we had, some of them predate performance analytics in general.
Exactly.
So look what's there. Look at the dates that are coming through. And if in doubt, post a question in the community. That somebody's there going to explain how to do this, or if there's a better way, or what comes through.
Okay. Thank you. Roger's question, is this specific of documents used currently available in ServiceNow resource, i.e. a specific URL? Roger, are you talking about the links that are in the presentation? Because all of those will take you to the latest version of, say, for example, create an indicator source. That's going to take you to the latest version, the Utah version of that. Yeah, all of the links in this presentation will take you to the latest version of that in the ServiceNow docs. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes, so let's make sure that we can get to a couple other things here that are important. So this will be out on the community, like I said, later on today or early tomorrow morning, depending on how fast I get the recording back. So, but make sure that you're checking out our community site anyway. This is where all of that information will be, and you can see the previous ones and what's in the future. Make sure you're checking out our pro tips, quick hitter videos that help you make some decisions, maybe on an initial journey or as you're still in your journey. Now Learning, which Adam just mentioned, make sure that you go there and you're utilizing that. There's some really great courses there. The PA Advanced one is on demand now. It doesn't require you being in person or whatnot. Our sister academies that are out there, so check those out as well. And that's actually, the link has changed. That's different. Knowledge, we're a few weeks away from that. So if you can get there, we'd love to see all of you there. Come and find us. We'll be out on the floor. And we also have some labs that some of us on this call are actually going to be doing. So if you're there, please come by, and we see, or at least I do, and I think everybody else that's here, I see a lot of names every couple of weeks, and some names that are familiar because they're there a lot and they ask a lot of questions, or we've actually unmuted them, and I'd love to put a face to anybody's name that's here. So if you're at Knowledge, come by and see us. You'll find us somewhere. So with that in mind, which is a question that we've been asked past couple of weeks, these are the platform labs that are actually going to be happening at Knowledge. I'm not going to read these, but it'll be a part of the PDF that I'm going to attach, so you can actually look through those and see if that is something that you're interested in going to. And like I said, I think everybody on this call, except for the exception of maybe one, is actually going to be doing a lab in at Knowledge. So yeah. And then a couple of weeks from now, which will be our last Academy session prior to Knowledge, the week of Knowledge, we won't have an Academy session. It'll just be Knowledge. But in a couple of weeks, we're going to look at using the data certification module, if you're familiar or not familiar with that, to actually manage PAR content. So this is another exciting one that's going to take you outside of the box and give you the ability to use some other things within the platform along with PAR. So with that, if we're good, or is there anything that we need to touch before?
There is a weird question that just came in. Oh, yeah, Adam's answering it. Never mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So with that, being respectful of time, we are going to give you 1 minute back. So thank you again, everyone who came. Thank you for all the panelists for speaking up and answering questions and giving opinions and things of that sort. It's always great to have you all here. And thank you to the customers. Couldn't do it without you. So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you.